Okay, welcome, Dr. Wolfson. We're so glad to have you on the line.
Thanks, Dr. Aaron. Sure to be on with you, and so excited to share some holistic heart health information with all your listeners, and to get the message out there of health and wellness is what we're all about. So thank you again.
Well, we appreciate it. And folks, we have an amazing doctor on the line. But before we dive into this, let's just, tell us a little bit about who you are. We know you're married with kids. What do you guys like to do for fun? What gets you up in the morning?
Listen, I am. I'm married 14 years as of yesterday, as a matter of fact, and we've got 3 beautiful children and 1 fantastic dog, and we live in the middle of nowhere, Colorado, which is exactly where we want to be. And despite all the craziness around us, we always look for all the positive that we can in our lives, and really been a blessing to be able to do what I do. I love waking up every morning. I love waking up to my family, and I love waking up educating the world about real heart health, and how we can steer away from pharmaceuticals and medical procedures as much as possible. And that's what I really like to share, because I know so many of my cardiology colleagues really don't have that same approach. In fact, just about none of them do. So their cardiology model right now is all, again, it's about the pharmaceuticals, it's about surgeries, it's about radiation-based testing. And so I really go after what the cause is of cardiovascular illness and get people to reverse it. And yeah, that's exciting for me.
And it's it's funny to hear, when we say, what's exciting for you? When we're in health and we see lives changed, it gets us up in the morning. I remember the day my dad died at age 50. I was at Slippery Rock University. I was studying health and physical education. I didn't understand what I understand now, but I vowed that day, this is not going to happen to me. And when we look at statistics globally, and then we go back to, nationally in Pittsburgh, heart disease is #1 killer. And it is getting younger and younger people. In Pittsburgh, 45% of all deaths were related to heart disease in 2016. That's just absurd. Pittsburgh is 69% higher in heart disease than the nation. So why don't you, let's dive into your expertise. How did you get here? I'm sure the listeners are curious. How did you become the guy you are with an education from, straight medicine and cardiology? Tell us a little bit about that journey, and then we'll dive into some real tactical advice.
Yeah, sure thing. And you and I have talked about this before. Both of us lost our fathers way too young. And my father was 63 when he passed away, which is obviously very, very young, let alone compare years at 50. But as my father was getting sick of a Parkinson's-like illness, that's really when I was awoken to real health and wellness. And that, again, was by my wife, who is a doctor of chiropractic, DC, or as she says, DC, doctor of cause. And as I met her, she said, you have to become the same, a doctor of cause. You have to find why your patients have cardiovascular illness. You have to find those reasons for them, and you have to find it for yourself, unless you want to be like your father. And I said, what does this have to do with me being like my father? And she said, well, your father is sick for a reason. Your father is sick because of food, because of a toxic lifestyle. He was a cardiologist, just like me. I followed exactly in his footsteps. And she said, if you want to follow in his to the grave, continue on the way you are. If you want to make some radical changes, then I suggest you do so, and you'll live. And what she had to say made total sense. So again, I did 4 years of medical school, 3 years of internal medicine, 3 years of cardiology training. And now I'm on the job for a couple of years, and I see all this sickness around me. I see the sickness in my father. And when I met her, to hear really what sounds so simple in retrospect, the stuff that you talk about all the time, Dr. Aaron, where you're like, hey, it's about the food. It's about getting the stress out of your life. It's about being physically active. It's about getting appropriate sleep. I mean, you talk about all these things, yet us medical doctors, we get none of that information at all. We just get the pills, we get the surgeries. That's just how medical training and the doctors are controlled. That's our paradigm, or as some people would say, it's our matrix that we're stuck in. And I'm just so happy to get out of it.
That must have been an amazing conversation when you guys were dating. When, because I'm sure I've talked to Dr. Heather, and she is passionate, and she sounds pretty tough. I imagine that was early in your relationship that she had to lay some groundwork.
Well, I think a lot of people have heard me say this before, and it's kind of like it's a pretty funny bit that I do when I talk from the stage or in interviews like this, where I say, she said, your profession is killing people. All the pharmaceuticals, the surgeries, they're dangerous, they're worthless. There's a better way, and she told me that on our first date. Like, she was not afraid to go right into it. And if you know my wife, you know how passionate she is about about health and wellness. You say, well, what does she wake up every day? She wakes up every day with the idea of, I need to change the world. I need to save the children. I need to save people. And when you're that passionate, yeah, you don't you don't talk social issues. That's just not how she is, and it's not how I am. She's got no interest in talking about the latest in politics or the latest with your local sports team or clothing is or what kind of car you drive. That's just not what she's into. She's into one thing and one thing only. It's really, well, it's a combination of the health of children, the health of animals, and the health of the planet. That's how she rolls, and that's what she taught me. And it was all new to me as a Chicago guy to think like that. But it's an awakening, and I appreciate it.
So when you were in before this transition, did you feel like, hey, I'm saving lives, I'm doing a very good job? I can't imagine you not feeling that way. And this is the whole profession is in medicine is that you have to have felt like you were doing a good job until you started to see things a little differently. Is that correct?
Yeah, most certainly. I guess I don't want to say it's like a God complex or a hero complex, but I mean, we certainly feel that way. I look back and, did I save people's lives? Yeah, I did, in the sense of emergency room care. And emergencies will always exist, and we need emergency room doctors and we need trauma situations. But as you know, it's a matter of, how do we really prevent illness? And as I look back on it now, so much opportunity was wasted, not talking real prevention, because pharmaceuticals are not prevention. They're just an attempt at a cover up or a band-aid approach, as opposed to, if I would have people over the years and talked about nutrition and talked about the to sleep and sunshine and stress mitigation, talking about evidence-based supplements, referring everybody, as I truly believe, how every care, and to be able to educate people the importance of chiropractic care, not just for headaches and neck pain, but as a source of overall health and wellness. I've got no doubt, Dr. Aaron, that if everybody was under chiropractic care and under the care of a holistic chiropractor like yourself, where they were getting educated on all these different health and wellness topics, the health, I mean, you talked about the 69% higher risk of cardiovascular disease in Pittsburgh and stuff like that. As you know, we would literally be able to wipe out those very, very quickly when following the holistic approach.
I totally agree. And it takes, what I see is it takes effort. Have to think outside the box, and we need to find people that are doing this. And that's why, we're doing this podcast, and I hope to reach not only the Pittsburgh people, but people across the world. If my dad would have heard this information, I remember one of my daughters sitting, she was probably about 9 years old at the time, and she was doing some homework. And I came home late one night because I had a workshop, and she said to me, hey Dad, where were you? And I was teaching. And she said, well, do you miss your dad? I said, yeah, I do. And she said, if your dad would have been in an office like yours, he would still be alive. And even at that age, she saw something that was powerful, just how we lived our life and the fear that we don't have, that we can live and express life and know that we're not going to be a victim. So let's talk about some strategies. Now, I mean, there are a lot of patients out there, and what I hear a lot is, Doc, I would love to get off meds. I'm afraid. My cardiologist says, I'm not sure what to take in this, what step to take. So where do we begin as a city, as a nation? What would you suggest, your advice? Where do we start here?
Well, I mean, listen, if you look at kind of the main cardiac diagnoses, things like high cholesterol, coronary artery disease, atrial fibrillation, the causes of all those are essentially the same. So we all kind of debate and what kind of plan we should follow. I think the simplest thing is just to get the chemicals out of our food. So if we can go with organic food, and therefore we're not getting some fertilizers and pesticides, genetically modified foods, just stick with real, whole, organic food. That's a great place to start. The next thing I like to go after is to get rid of the gluten, which is a nasty protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. So if we can use that as a basis for healthy food eating, really focus on is sleep. There is nothing more important than sleep. And most people go to sleep at midnight, whereas the word midnight comes from middle of the night. So it used to be that our ancestors went to sleep after the sundown and awoke before the sunrise. Now we're in the artificial light and all the problems with that. And I think that's so detrimental to health as well. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're able to get outside and get in the natural light. Hopefully it's sunny wherever you are. I think there's so much sickness in places like my hometown of Chicago and in Pittsburgh and Buffalo and all these different places that don't necessarily get the sunshine that people need. And I really encourage people to do that. So simple strategies like that will make a big difference. Of course, right now we are in a time where stress has to be at an all-time high, where people are stressed. They're stressed about their health. They're stressed financially. They're stressed maybe about their living situation, their relationship. Stress is at an all-time high. There can be no scenario where things are worse than they are right now, given the scare and the fear of a virus. And stress and fear and anxiety markedly increase cardiovascular risk. And I think that is it's a bigger risk factor than everything else, that we're talking about, whether it's sleep or it's sunshine or it's the food story. I think the stress, situation is the worst. So, and then you look at environmental chemicals, and I think you look at some of these big cities, whether it is the Pittsburgh, the Philadelphias, the New York, the Chicago, the Los Angeles, the amount of pollution that occurs in those places is also very, very detrimental to health. And that's all. So I think a lot of different strategies for people to jump onto, but I think, once again, the more you do it, the better your health is going to be.
So when just listening to you explain that, I think some people will say, yeah, but what about heart disease? What about, cardiovascular disease, arteries that are hardening? Do we have to approach this specifically just for that? Or is what you're saying, when we look at a global health response, our diet, our sunshine, our activity level, our nerve system, our sleep, chemicals, does that affect heart disease the same as it does every other disease?
Yeah, most certainly. Most certainly. We know from the literature that these things they increase your risk of coronary artery disease, heart attacks, and death from coronary artery disease. So we know that poor nutrition obviously contributes. We know that lack of sunshine and low levels of vitamin D, but more specifically, lack of sunshine increases risk of all diseases, including cardiac. We know that inadequate sleep, 6 hours or less of sleep, markedly increases your risk of heart attack and stroke. We know, again, about the pollution story and heart disease. So all these different factors all certainly play a role. And that's the beauty of what we're doing, is that uh, us medical doctors, we're really good at putting labels on people. You know, this person has Parkinson's, this person has CAN disease, this person has heart disease or high blood pressure, but yet these are all labels for the symptoms and signs, but they don't tell us about the underlying cause. And if we look at those causes again, get back to the basics. And if we all learn the basics in medical school and we're able to teach that, I could have saved many more lives than I actually saved. And a lot of what I was doing, the sickness really, is that, the sick person requires a pacemaker. And does a pacemaker save their life? Yeah, it saved their life. But now they just go back into the sickness, and it may save their life and may have prolonged their life. But again, that same person was going to die of cancer or heart disease, brain disease, and there was nothing that I was able to do to stop it. All that I did was put in a pacemaker and kind of prolong the sickness.
Well, I'm glad you share that way, because, in my office and what I teach, when I teach my family, is we have to have the foundation. If we don't have the foundation, you can't take a vitamin to change the if your nutrition stinks, you can't take a vitamin to replace that. And you can't exercise your way out of poor nutrition. So there's a lot of underlying factors that if we would just get the foundation strong, all these other sicknesses and diseases would start to fade. And I'm glad you say it, because, coming from a cardiologist who's dealing specifically with the #1 killer in America, we still have to look at foundational things. So if a patient would say, do I need, like in the Pittsburgh area, I don't know if we have anyone like you. We have some naturopaths, some people that speak like us, some chiropractors. Where does a patient start? Do they need a cardiologist like yourself? Or can they start with these foundational things? And I mean, what would you suggest there? They're reaching out, they have some heart trouble, they have some blood pressure issues, or they've already had a heart attack. They trust their cardiologist, but they don't like the meds, and they want to start moving away from that.
Yeah, I think that I'm very skilled to deal with any patient situation. Obviously, I like the team approach. So all of my patients, again, they're under chiropractic care, because I'm not a chiropractor and I don't perform chiropractic care. But when it comes to who is the best person for me, well, obviously anybody who has a personal history of cardiovascular disease. Yeah, I'm an expert at that, because I know, of course, the conventional side of cardiology and the natural holistic side of cardiology. Also, if someone is concerned about cardiovascular issues, well, I can't think anybody's more skilled than I am in order to do so. So I do think, again, there are some fantastic functional doctors that are out there, and I think that that's a great, but I think if you're looking for the ultimate in heart health, whether somebody would start off reading my book or attending some of my webinars or reading my blogs, there's a lot of different things I think people could do. But the good news is, as you know, Dr. Aaron, is that there's so many of us that are really coming, that have quote unquote seen the light and are really coming into the marketplace to be able to help people. And I think it's going to continue to take time, but I think conventional cardiology is really going to change to a more truly preventive model without the pharmaceuticals.
I sure hope so. And, I have your book. We've done some workshops in my office based on your book. And I have to tell you, I've done workshops for 20 some years of my 26. I love teaching. And this by far, I think, is the best response we had from patients. I actually had a handful of patients say, please do this again. And it was over a 2-hour workshop, because we got into the real details of it. They were given a copy of your book. They were told what to read in your book and how to apply it. And I told them, take the book home and study it. Don't just read through it and put it on your coffee table. You want to take a chapter, take a highlighter and pen, stop where you need to, and implement. And once you implement a couple strategies, you go to the next chapter and you implement. And I pray they did, but I've gotten the best feedback that I had probably from most workshops. And they asked me, please do it again. Well, I had another one scheduled, and we're in the middle of this COVID-19. We can't have meetings. So I'm going to do a webinar, and I'm going to put it out on the webinar and put that on my website for everyone to see and learn. But your resources are amazing. Your book is absolutely incredible. We'll have all this linked up to the podcast. So, you can reach out to Dr. Jack. I would suggest get his book immediately. If you're in the area, come over. We've got books in our office, and start learning this and start applying it. And, I always told them, and maybe you could give some advice here, if they're on, heart medication, I say, talk to your doctor and ask them or tell them, look, you would like to reduce or get off this. And in the meantime, start applying strategies, start applying chiropractic care, start doing some exercise, eating right, getting rid of toxins, detoxing your body, changing the nutrition. And as you go through these strategies, you absolutely will change. Your blood work will change, your health will change, your blood pressure will change. You monitor that, or you have your doctor monitor, and when things start to change, then they can assist you in reducing that. And your book is a wonderful resource because they can read it from you and say, this isn't just the chiropractor saying this. This is Dr. Jack Wolfson, who is a cardiologist. Any extra advice there?
Well, I think, your points are well taken. It's that, you want to be able to work with a doctor that's going to be willing to work with you. This is not the 1970s where it's my way or the highway, take an aspirin, call me in the morning. I mean, now we've got so many other, things we can do. And frankly, if your cardiologist or your doctor is not interested, you get off the pharmaceuticals, well, then it's time to find a new doctor. And I think a lot of medical doctors will assist people in doing things the natural way. And if they're not, come out and see me. I'll see you in Arizona anytime. But I think that's why it's so well attended, your events, Dr. Aaron. You are an amazing human being, and you're very intelligent and very passionate about health and wellness. So naturally, people are going to gravitate towards your information. And I think the other why cardiovascular issues are so well attended is because it's such a pain point, because so many millions of people are on cholesterol drugs, blood pressure drugs. It just goes on and on and on. So, people want better. People are sick of the pharmaceuticals. And I think, our generation, Dr. Aaron, we looked at our parents' generation, and we saw them swallowing all these different pharmaceuticals. We saw so much sickness, whether it's in your parents in particular, or aunts and uncles, or just in your patient database that's 70, 80 years old. And our children will undoubtedly continue to look at our generation and say, we want to live better than that. We don't want sickness. We don't want to have this, and this. So I think that approach is really fantastic. I applaud you for sharing, my information. I applaud your patients and your clients and your community for really listening to the truth about health and wellness. And then hopefully, again, when people come to your events, Dr. Aaron, or people, tune into your webinar, invite your friends, invite your family, get them in to hear this information, because, my book has over 300 references at the end of it. This is information we're providing based on science that the average cardiologist, unfortunately, is not considering.
So, and you mentioned earlier that, the cardiologists or the medical community do you see a change that they're looking more to begin to look at health and prevent health rather than just treat the sickness? Are you actually seeing that in the medical community?
Well, no, I'm really not, unfortunately. I mean, because obviously I see a lot of patients and I hear the same thing for year after year. Cardiologists are still pushing everybody to be on statin drugs. They're still pushing aspirin on everybody. They're still sending people for dangerous procedures, and they're not talking about causation. They're not talking about nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. And we talked about supplements. You kind of mentioned a point real briefly. We can circle back on this, is that the supplements are there to supplement the healthy life. Do I think someone who eats fast food, cookies and cupcakes, and drinks too much alcohol would do beneficial on our supplements? Yes, but supplements are supposed to supplement the health and wellness lifestyle, and that's what it's all about. But I've got some ideas of how I would help cardiologists learn the natural approach. But again, as you know, it's so financially driven, their current model. It's hard to give up the things that I gave up as a insurance-based, hospital-based cardiologist. For me to give it all up, I don't think a lot of cardiologists are willing to do so.
Yeah, I think that's at the crux of it. Is it's comfortable, it's easily driven, and what you're doing is you're swimming upstream. As a chiropractor, I've been swimming upstream my whole career, but I would never ever change it for anything because it's truth, it's powerful, and the patients' lives that I see changed and saved keeps me getting up every morning. Can you share maybe a patient or two, a story, someone that you worked with, and where they started and how you changed their life? This would be interesting.
Well, I think there's so many people that I've seen over the years that are just they're on all these different pharmaceuticals, yet they're still sick. They still have atrial fibrillation, they still have another heart attack, and they come in to see me and they're like, I don't understand. I take all the drugs. I've done everything they've said to do, yet I still continue with disease. And I tell them quite simply, you're just not going after the cause. That's your problem. That's the doctor's problem. And that's where we start to listen. Under my care, if people follow what I say, they lose weight, they have more energy, more vitality. We start to normalize blood pressure, improve cholesterol numbers, get people out of atrial fibrillation. I've got all the testimonials for that. And it is very exciting to be able to make that kind of impact in people's lives. Right, Dr. Aaron? I mean, that's why we went into health and wellness. We went into it because we really wanted to help people. And I think a lot of the medical doctors lost that along the way. It just became so financially driven, so pharmaceutical, driven. We get kind of in this little model where that's all, and these aren't unintelligent people. I mean, you can talk about whether it's the University of Pittsburgh or the Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic, there's, these are highly intelligent people. They're just ignorant to the real health and wellness model. And if we can kind of pull those people over, that's how the world is going to become a healthier place.
I remember when my dad in his mid 40s, he really couldn't do anything physically because his heart was getting weaker. He was on heart medicine. I remember them in the cabinet, and they kept getting more and more. They kept increasing. His health kept getting worse every year, taking the medication. He would get many bouts of pneumonia all winter long. He would live with long johns and flannels and miss work. He would just get through. And the stress he was under, because he lost his job, so he was trying to make ends meet with doing several odd jobs and working midnight shifts. So he was up at midnight when he should be sleeping, and the stress level was high. But he was never, ever told anything healthy, anything. And then, and I was attending Superior for Physical Education and Health. And I said, Dad, your heart's a muscle. We need to work it. You need to do things that are healthy. And I was learning a little bit of nutrition, and I was trying to feed that. And he said, you don't understand. If I exercise, my heart's going to fail and I'll have a heart attack. So well, if you don't use it, it's going to die and you're going to have a heart attack. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And when he died, I thought, this system is not, it's not correct. There's something wrong with it. I didn't know at the time, but and he was the typical, take drugs, and he had surgery several months before he died, a mitral valve surgery. And they said, well, this is the best we have. And he may live, he may not. A couple months later, had his final heart attack and died. So it's a typical thing. And that does get me up every morning to think we can stop a lot of this. And I look at heart disease, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that by activating these simple foundational principles, 50, 60, 70, 80% of heart disease, cardiovascular problems will be especially minimized, if not completely eliminated. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all that. And I think that What you encountered would be similar to probably what I've encountered as well. That sometimes when you're talking with family and close friends, it's hard to get the point across. Yet, if you are listening to this and you get a loved one a copy of my book, you don't have to try and explain what you heard. You don't have to again try and teach someone that you love. Just get them a copy of the book, get them to attend Dr. Aaron's webinar or one of your live events. Just bring them in. Just say, listen, you know what, I heard some really interesting information. I would like for you to hear the same. And just like leave it at that. And whether you give them a copy of my book, get them on a webinar, get them into a live event, that's really where the change is going to happen. Because Aaron, Doc, that's your area of expertise. That's my area of expertise. And as we can continue to teach our community, that's how it's all going to trickle out. And if you think about what the world knew about holistic medicine 20 years ago, was just about nothing, certainly compared to where it is today. Now, we still have a lot of battles ahead of us because, again, the corporate message is so well financed, and people are scared, people are afraid, and they're influenced by the bully tactics of their doctor. But again, that's what you and I will keep doing. We'll keep beating the streets and tell people, hey, there's a better way, and continue to lead by example, which you do exactly. More of us need to continue to talk the talk and walk the walk.
Awesome. We'll have all your resources, and I encourage everyone who's listening to go to the doctorswolfson.com. We'll have all this linked up. Read the blogs, study the blogs, get a copy of the book. If you need a copy and you're in the area, stop by my office. We'd love to help you. But what you just said there, when they buy a book and they start acting on it, is when change happens. Just thinking about it or saying, this was a cute talk. I still play rugby. I'm 54. And I tell my kids, and I taught my kids, you're not going to have fun by sitting on the sideline. You might get hurt out on the field, but you're going to have a lot more fun. So as we'll kind of wrap this up, and I so appreciate you being on here. This is so exciting. I want to see Pittsburgh, the health of Pittsburgh change, and I want to see the health of our nation change. And it's guys like you. There's so many people out there like you and I that are pushing the envelope and pushing because we truly care about people. And there's no side effects to this. When you get sunshine, the worst that can happen is you get sunburn. Just get out and have fun. Or like you're out riding your bikes with your family. What if you wreck? So what? You brush it off, you'll heal. So is there any crazy fun plans you have in the future?
Well, like you said, we're coming up on summertime. The weather's gorgeous where we live. I just love getting outdoors. The idea of exercise inside of a gym where it's it's artificial lights. It's all of the electromagnetic fields from the machinery now, where people are going to be practicing social distancing and just using all of these disinfectants and all these toxic cleaning agents. I want no part of that at all. I want to be outside. So spring is in the air. It's a beautiful time to get outside, mountain bike, hike, just go for a walk, stand up paddleboard, kayak, do whatever, just get outside. And especially when you do it with family and friends, how amazing that is. Listen, Dr. Aaron, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I watched a lot of sports on TV. I played a lot of sports, but we sat and we watched a lot on TV. I've got no interest in that anymore. I want to be with my family. I want to be with my friends, and I want to be outside. And I think that's really a key.
I agree. And what you just said there, with you go out with your family, it's not that you just go out and you take your family. They're learning this as a behavior. And when they learn it as a behavior, my oldest is 28. I have 5 kids, and they are doing the same things that we taught them all along. In fact, they're doing them better. They'll make food, at the house better than I can make. And they're making shakes, and they're adding supplements, and they're exercising, and they know this stuff. They know the importance of raising their children this way too. So it's when you do it as a family, they learn it as a core, and it's awesome. What are some of your favorite resources?
Well, listen, our website, thedoctorswolfson.com, we got a lot of great information out there. I've also got a private Facebook group called Natural Heart Doctor. So would love to see anyone who's listening join the group, Natural Heart Doctor, up on Facebook. And then again, I've got I've got a webinar series coming up on atrial fibrillation. That's going to be spectacular. I've done courses and webinars on hypertension and cholesterol. So I mean, I think all you got to do is probably the best thing maybe is to come to the website, hop on our email list, and we'll be able to send you some stuff. As far as like other good books, there's so many great great pieces that are out there. One of my favorite books really to kind of hone in on nutrition was from the 1920s. It was Weston A. Price, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, which, as you know, was by a dentist who traveled around the world with his wife, looking at the health and wellness of native peoples that were eating their own foods and living their lifestyle, and it was spectacular. So although it was written in the 1920s, great pictures and really just a wonderful foundation about how to live the health and wellness lifestyle.
Your resources, and folks, you need to get on the email list. You'll see the webinars Dr. Jack does. I've attended several of your webinars. I listened to your information. You had a webinar specifically on was it A1C or no?
It was probably LP little a, which is a nasty cholesterol particle that 20% of the population has. And if you don't know if you have it, you should get tested for it. And if you do have it, you should watch my webinar for sure. Thanks, Dr. Aaron. I mean, that was a fantastic lecture and so necessary.
And there's so much information that they need to know, people need to know, and we would have to spend all day doing this, but the LP little a, I added that in my workshop. I studied your webinar. I would sit and listen to the webinar, take notes, study it, take notes, study it. This is how you got to do this. If you want to win, you can't just watch things and then just go sit and watch TV. You have to study it and then implement it. So I implemented it in my PowerPoint. I taught it. So to teach it, I had to learn it. So I had to learn it from I watched your webinar several times and taking notes. And when I applied it, the audience was just amazed. They couldn't believe. They're like, this is incredible information. Why aren't we told this? And I'm like, it's in the book. It's on Dr. Jack's website. Go, keep learning. I can't teach you all this. You have to learn yourself. So you have so many resources on yours that I would encourage everyone to jump on. And that's one thing, we want these resources and we play around with it. But when you have a good website, a resource like yours, and you want to learn health, just stop, just study what Dr. Jack is doing and learn, because he's done all the hard work. How many years did you put in learning this? How many hours a week do you read and study and train and travel all over the world? We were in Canada together on a seminar. I mean, we travel all over the world for this stuff. So just kind of push stuff aside, go to Dr. Jack's information. It will all be linked up. And you will not only be amazed by the information, how practical it is, but it's going to save your life. It's going to save your life. So any parting advice, any last words of wisdom from Dr. Jack?
Well, I think like you said, it's, you hear all this information and sometimes, you can just kind of write it down on like a note card and just, again, jot down the notes. And then you can refer back to them or even just enter them into your cell phone, just like, little quick tips, what to do to remind yourself, put them into your Google Calendar, eat more seafood, go organic, make sure your laundry detergent is natural, make sure you see your chiropractor, this week. I mean, all these different things you can put into all these different realms, I think, are so important. So again, Dr. Aaron, thank you for everything you do. And thank you for helping me, share the information. Thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. And folks, take us up on the offer and go see Dr. Jack's information so we can make Pittsburgh the healthiest city in America and make this a way to other cities pick up on it. We can make it a healthy nation. So thanks, Dr. Jack. Have a great day.
You too.